Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, and right off the top, special guest. So happy to be joined by Pat Narduzzi, the head coach of the 4-0 Pitt Panthers. Pat, thanks for joining us on Kings of the North.
Hey, it's my pleasure. It's great to be on with you guys today, especially in an open weekend. I'm not as stressed out, so I appreciate you guys having me on and having me on this week.
Awesome.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time, Pat. A lot of folks talking about your guys' start, talking about how well you've played offensively, how explosive you guys have been. And, obviously Eli Holstein gets a lot of notoriety there. Des Reed, your receivers. I'm wondering, as you've gotten off to the start, though, who are there guys who have been like a little more unsung, I guess, maybe not gotten quite as much as attention as your quarterback, as your backs, as your skill guys have gotten if you started 4-0?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, which one of those guys, it seems like the ball's been spread around. So I think everybody on offense has gotten a chance. Maybe the one guy that hasn't, that's, done a great job blocking for us is Gavin Bartholomew. I mean, everybody thinks about him as a pass catcher, as a tight end. He's dynamic. We haven't got him the ball down the field for whatever reason, but that's coming. But we expect, maybe, Gavin is the unsung hero but he's the dude before the season starts.
Pat, so this is a Northern college football show. We deal with the 28 power conference teams in the northern half of the country. And man, you could not be more of a son of the North. Have you ever coached or lived ever any further south than Cincinnati, right? This is a whole northern experience in your football life, is it not?
No question about it. You think about like where you're from, where your roots are, really grew up in this area and I've never left the area. I had a chance to go down to Texas A&M one time with Kevin Sumlin when he got the job, and it took me about a week to turn it down. D'Antonio was all mad at me, like, what's taking so long? What the heck? But I ended up staying at Michigan State back in the day. But, I had a chance to go down there. But I feel like if I would have gone down there, I might not be the head coach in the North at the University of Pittsburgh. And I think things happen like that. So you stay regional. Had a chance to go out to Colorado. What do I know about Colorado? How am I going to recruit out there? So I've been really choosing with where to go, and the North is the way to go.
Pat, I got a sword here on this show. Absolute. I want to give you this sword for turning down Texas A&M and staying up here, brother. We got to keep the North in the North. That's a huge move for the North. Was it hard, though? I mean, they're probably throwing oil money at you. Was that a difficult decision?
It was more money than I was making up there. But, too many coaches make bad decisions based on money. It's about location. It's about where you're going, what you're doing. I was happy where I was with D'Antonio. Money is not everything. I mean, and it's the same thing in this NIL game that people are playing nowadays. You hear some of the bad news that's happening out there. I mean, it's like, it's not about the money. Like, you're looking for where the money's going to be in 3 or 4 years down the road, not where it is today. We've all worked our way up to where we are. I've taken the hard path, and to me, that's the way you build yourself. And, it wasn't hard. Yeah. Cause it was a lot more money. But there was the unknowns of like, will I be happy down here? One of the big mistakes they made was I took my wife from like, honey, this is real. We got to go check this out. Someone just got the job, and they took her shopping for a house. So the realtor took her out, and they're looking for a house, and she started talking about wild pigs in the backyard. My wife's like, we ain't dealing with any wild pigs, man. There's no wild pigs in the North. Okay.
Oh my God.
That was one of the closers there too. Should have never taken her out to look at houses that never to come up.
What we're going to make that shirt. Ain't no wild pigs in the North. We're sending that to you and your wife, Pat. That is the best. God, we love it because we love Northern football, and why we do this show, Pat, is because we want to make sure that it gets the credit and attention it deserves. But over time, sometimes there's a lot of good head football coaches up here in the North, but I feel like sometimes the money takes people south. And I think maybe in the past, some guys have thought, well, I have to go there to win. I have to go to their coach at the highest level. And I don't think that's ever been true. And I certainly don't think it's true now. And you're a shining example of what you can do when you know your roots. It doesn't mean that you're parochial, but you know who you are. You know where you best fit, and fit matters. And you're the shining example, man. I hope other coaches watch this and follow the Pat Narduzzi model.
I've tried to educate guys, in the past on just making the right moves. It's all about making good choices, right?
Yeah.
In life and in business, and obviously the coaching business, you got to make good decisions. And young coaches just want to, look for that new shiny little logo that's on the shirt and try to find something different. And you're exactly right. I hope they do pay attention and ask questions, because the football in the Big Ten, and again, I look behind you, the Big Ten, Michigan State, I mean, it does, the ACC, the Big Ten, I mean, everybody talks about the SEC, hey, more money doesn't matter. I mean, everybody talks about all this, the different, TV deals you're getting, but like you can win with all that, without all that. You don't need, all the money. Money doesn't win, football and toughness. And again, the Northern football toughness that we've got up here, I think pays off.
Pat, you guys in your non-conference schedule played 3 teams from Ohio and obviously your rival in West Virginia. And I'm wondering if that regionality matters at all to you to kind of keep it close to home, or if that's just sort of the way it worked out and you'll play whoever they put on your schedule every year.
I'm going to play whoever they put on my schedule. It's the first time I really just even thought that, we are 3-0 in the state of Ohio, which is not easy to do. But and then, it just happened that way. We've been down to Tennessee and we played different teams here, non-conference wise, but it's just kind of the way it panned out this year. And we're looking forward to North Carolina and getting out of state here and getting out of and going down to show a little Northern toughness.
Oh, we love it. We do love. I do think we've talked a lot on this show, Pat, about like, especially in a world where conferences are less geographic than they've ever been. I think the non-conference, when you can make it regional, I was at the Pitt Cincinnati game, the backyard brawl, like those games are so important. Those are 2 shining examples of, for your fans, for fans in this area, what great experience for them. So we're so excited that you played those games. We're maybe going to try to crawl in your head a second here, Pat, if you don't mind. From afar, before the backyard brawl, you were sort of talking about with your assistant coaches, like, right, protect your family, talking with the program, like a big rivalry like this, you want to make sure that you go out and do everything you can for your loved ones in this game. And then last week with Youngstown State is obviously very personal with your dad coaching there. Is there something, it just feels like it's been a personal year for you, right? That you've talked about family, you've talked about things like this in a world where the sport has become more of a business. Why has that been where your head and your heart have been this season?
I think, every week you got to make it personal some way. I mean, to me, football is my life. It's passion for this game. And I tell our kids every week to find, who are you playing for this week? Like, what are you playing for and who are you playing for? And I'm always going to find something I'm playing for, something I'm angry about, something that gets you pissed off and angry to go out and play. And I think that's what it is. And last week, it was something that happened 40 years ago that, just hit me. We played them 2 other times. I've never brought it up. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But ever since I played in rivalry games with that, I see, the Spartans, I see, Michigan right above it, but playing in that rivalry made me understand what a rivalry was, to where I always, every year I play a rivalry game, whether it was Penn State here a few years ago or was playing West Virginia, those become personal because it's something you have to live with for 365 days a year. If you don't win it, you live with it, and you got to live with it the next day and the next day. And it can be brutal. Some of these big time, rivalries like a West Virginia Pitt is, or a Michigan State, Michigan. I didn't get the chance to. I played at Rhode Island. We played Brown. Brown wasn't one of those. Brown, Rhode Island. It just wasn't one of those that you go, oh yeah, this is the one. But from my experiences, at Michigan State, playing Michigan and losing to Mario Manningham and Chad Henne on a last second, double move to the field when we knew Chad Henne was going to throw a double move to Mario anytime he was lined up the field. We get beat, and my kids got to take the abuse the next week in school. That's what you're talking about, is protecting your family. I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going to make sure that we cover that double move, that we hit the quarterback, and that we win that football game.
Pat, is that mindset at all what has allowed your team to play so well in the fourth quarter, especially the Cincinnati and West Virginia games? Those are, games that have a lot of swings in them, but kind of when it came down to it in the crunch time, and I'm not just talking about Eli, I thought like your whole team just finds ways to make plays in those big moments. And maybe those are kind of the things that swing your season one way or the other. Is the stuff you're talking about there with finding a way to find an edge, no matter where it is that what allows you guys to play that way in those moments?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think this football team's got a lot of grit to them. I think they're tough. They're going to find a way to get it done. We talk about finding ways. Doesn't matter how we get it done. Let's just get the win on Saturday and be 1-0. But we've had a lot of success here. I saw a stat earlier in the week on my open week when I was on the road. Someone sent me, like, I think we're the 3rd winningest ACC team in the last 10 years. And we've won more. I think it's Clemson number 1. I forget who number 2 was, but we were number 3, and we've been number 2 for a while. We've won a lot of football games here. We've had success. We've really turned this place around. And I think last year was one of the most disappointing years I've been a part of as a coach. And I think just our off season, when we got here in January, it's like, okay, this is, came back, off of, the season. It's kind of like it's starting now. Okay. It started in January where we're 4-0. It didn't just start September or August 31st when we opened up. And I think that's kind of where we've had that little different attitude. I mean, again, making it personal. Like, how'd that feel? Like, how did you like 2023? Mm-hmm. It's 2024 and we were moving on and we weren't taking anything for granted. I think we, thought that we were just going to show up and win football games a year ago. So our football team has a little different attitude and they don't want to taste what they tasted last year. I think when we get to that fourth quarter, we've seen our kids step up and find ways to make plays.
Pat, I love this stat. I've charted it out a couple times, but in the 21 and 22 college football seasons, those 2 years, there were 9 power conference teams in those 2 seasons that won at least 20 games. And those 9 teams were Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Oregon, Utah, and Pitt. That is basically a list of the best college football programs in the country. And you guys are on that list. 2 great years. You just mentioned the 3-9 season last year. You've been there a decade. It's only your second losing season. But I'm always curious, when you have a year did you feel like you went through the fire and sort of came out the other side? Did anything change about you as a coach when you've had so much success and then you have a season like that?
I mean, I can't tell you anything changed, but just kind of, you understand, hey, thing can happen to anybody, right? It can happen to Alabama, it can happen to Ohio State, it can happen to Pitt. And you thought you were just going to roll, but every team is a little bit different. And for whatever reason, our guys didn't buy into what we were doing or what we're saying. So I can't say we've changed anything different. Okay. I'm going to coach the way I coach. I'm not going to change, what we, the recipe that we've had for years. But it's just, different football team. And sometimes you got to get knocked down to figure it out. And I think our guys learned a big lesson from a year ago. And I think we'll continue to learn as we play this year to see what kind of football team we are.
Pat, I want to ask you about your quarterback, Eli Holstein. We have a few minutes here left with you. Just playing like one of the better guys in the country at that position, three or four games, but been especially impressive late in games. And I'm wondering, as a coach and as a staff, if you knew or had a hunch at all that he might have that sort of clutch gene or whatever you want to call it for that late game performance, or if that's not something you really discern until you put your quarterback in those moments.
I don't think you find out about it until you get in those moments. I mean, you look at it. He started his first game here at home against Kent State, one of those northern teams in Ohio, and you didn't know what you were going to get that day. I mean, he won the job in camp. You get into that game, you go down to Cincinnati, and every week you're learning something new about him. We didn't know because he doesn't get hit in in preseason camp that he's going to be able to get face mask, get spun around, and still go gain 20 yards on a run. It's like, this guy's crazy. And then get up and start to yell at the officials like, "Where's the call?" And we got no call. But he's got some stuff to him like that you didn't know. There's so many little things you find out about how cool he is in the pocket, and you didn't know he's going to protect the ball like he has. Knock on some wood here. He's done a heck of a job of protecting the football, which is number one priority. We're winning the turnover ratio, which is going to allow you to be 4-0.
Pat, we always like to ask questions like this here on Kings of the North because we celebrate Northern football. Do you have a great snow football memory as a coach or a player from your past that you remember a game like that?
Oh, gosh, I think up in East Lansing, I think global warming's killing these snowy games, right?
I know.
It's killing the North. It's making us soft up here. But, there's probably, I think we got a Penn State win, beat another Northern team, at Michigan State in some, maybe an inch and a half of snow. But we haven't played in any deep snow, like we did back, in the days in the front yard.
Yeah. No, I was at the Alabama-Wisconsin game 2 weeks ago. It was like 90. I was like, oh, we got it. We're getting Bama in the North finally. And everybody was sweating. I was like, what is happening to this world? Do you ever think, Pat, just like do you kind of get what we're doing here? We want to contextualize and celebrate Northern football because we kind of feel like the South maybe gets an outsized amount of attention in this sport. Do you kind of get our gist here?
I really get your gist, and I appreciate what you guys are doing for college football and for the Kings of the North, I guess. Because you're exactly right. I mean, you're exactly right. I feel like the ACC gets disrespected. I mean, I've played in the Big Ten, or coached in the Big Ten, I should say, for 8 years, and now I'm going on year number 10 in the ACC. I think the ACC is athletic as you can get. I think it's more athletic than the Big Ten. I've gone on record and said that. I've done both. I can't compare it to the SEC.
Yeah.
But I think the toughness and the athletic ability of what Pitt is going to give you, up here in the North is exactly right. And there's something to it. And, and it takes a bunch of different things to get that done, whether it's coaches and players and all the different, the leadership at your university. I think I really do get what you guys are talking about. And I believe I might be on this podcast with you someday, fighting the same fight, because we do get disrespected up north.
And listen, man, you're 4-0. If the phone rings and you see Texas A&M on the caller ID, hang up, brother. All right? Don't let them come for you. Don't let the South come for Pat Narduzzi.
It ain't happening. It's not happening. I mean, I've turned down enough head coaching jobs to go, this is the spot I want to be in. And, there's been northern schools to come and get me. I've said no. Okay. So, it's a spot you want to lay down your legacy and continue to win. We've been to 2 championship games here in the last 9 seasons. Okay. Anybody else been there? There's only been 3 teams in the ACC win a championship. It's been Clemson's won a bunch of them. We've won one. And then last year, Florida State got one. Okay. You see how they're responding, down south, I guess. Right. So,
okay.
But, we're working on it.
All right. And last thing real quick, I talked to a Pitt fan at a tailgate the other day, and he said, we're going to have an awesome season. We've got Nardog. Is Nardog okay with you? We're not going to call you Nardog. We have too much respect for you for that. Do people call you Nardog?
You know what? You can call me whatever you want. My dad in the door, I don't care what you call me. I don't care what everybody else says on the outside. I pretty much stay right in my zone, in my lane. And, and again, some people go crazy about listening to, what's happening outside. But, I've heard Nardog, my dad was called Doozer. Okay. So I'm called Doozer as well. When I was a little guy, we were called Little Doozers because Big Doozer was, used to be a show called back in the day, I don't remember if you remember this, but back in the day in Northeastern Ohio, a big show called Doozers Bruisers. That's what they were.
Okay.
So it was a big TV show. So, hey, Nardog, whatever,
Okay. We'll call you 4-0. How about that? Pat Narduzzi, head coach of the Pitt Panthers, son of the North through and through. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time on Kings of the North, Pat.
Hey, anytime. I appreciate you guys and what you do. And thanks for having me on today. Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt. Quick break. When we come back, picks and previews on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. I can't help it. My instinct is for every question to be, do you get our show? Do you get it? Does this make sense? Is it okay that we're doing this? But when we have on True Sons of the North, you got to go there a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, I like getting some understanding, I guess, of what we're doing and some confirmation that we're on the right path from a true son of the North of Pat Narduzzi. By the way, somebody asked in the comments if I'm wearing a collared shirt because we talked to Pat Narduzzi. Yes. Otherwise, I'd be wearing a t-shirt like I normally do.
This is we step it up when we have a 4-0 coach on the show. So thanks to Pitt and Pat Narduzzi for making time for us on the Bowie. All right, it's time to get down to our picks and previews, and we're going to start with the big game breakdown this week because we have a lot of good solid games: Indiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Michigan, Oklahoma State, Kansas State is certainly a big one, but Illinois, Penn State is definitive for the North, and it is on against Alabama, Georgia, right? So like we actually are going to make, we've added a Cram It pick to our picks each week, which will be a Southern game. We have not been making a Cram It pick, but we've got to check in on Alabama, Georgia. So we'll have that later. But otherwise, we're not really talking about that. We're talking about this. This is a great game, Landis. Is it not? It's an 18-point spread, which is weird, but I think it's a great matchup.
I think it's an awesome game. I think it's a team sort of like on the rise a little bit in Illinois, where you kind of get to test like, okay, exactly how real is that? And then I think for Penn State, this is because of the way that West Virginia has started the season. This is the best test that Penn State will have gotten so far this year too. So it's an opportunity to learn a little bit about them. It's like a fascinating coaching matchup. It's going to be a great environment at night at Beaver Stadium. So this game's checking a lot of boxes. Like I understand that a lot of people are going to be tuned into Alabama, Georgia, but I actually think this could end up being a better game.
Can I just say also what a tremendous schedule ask it is of Illinois to go primetime at Nebraska, primetime at Penn State. If they could somehow pull off that double, that is like, it's almost crazy to me that this is the schedule. They're like, oh yeah, go over there. They're like, oh, come back over here. Like this is gonna be a raucous crowd for Penn State.
Yeah, it's not a whiteout. They're calling for whiteout energy, I guess. I don't know why they're not allowed to have more than one whiteout, but I guess they're not allowed to have that. But like we know what Penn State at night is going to be like. And their other night game, the whiteout game, I think is Washington. So like we'll see what that game even is, what it means, right? This is a ranked matchup in Beaver Stadium on a Saturday night. We've seen enough of those to know it's going to be a good time.
It is homecoming for Penn State. They are wearing their Generations of Greatness uniforms for the 7th time in the last 8 years. They're 4-2 in those games. So you're going to see the numbers on the helmet for Penn State. They're going to have white cleats, stripes on the pants, stripes on the sleeve. Penn State is coming off like just a drubbing. They outgained. It was Kent last week, right? Was it Kent?
Kent State, 56. I think it was.
718 yards to 66 yards in that game. According to Penn State game notes, it was the highest yard differential in an FBS game in 20 years, which is like, 718 to 66. That's not a shock. That's like, oh, you don't often outgain your opponent by 650 yards. We'll start for a big game breakdown, Illinois offense versus Penn State defense. And so we can revisit our awful Heisman picks. There cannot be a worse. How often does someone's Heisman pick get benched in September, which is what happened with my Heisman pick, Jackson Arnold, and my other 2 Heisman picks have like kind of been average and been hurt because they were Avery Johnson and Cam Rising. It is the worst preseason Heisman pick ever. Any person has ever made. It is almost enough to get me canceled and get this show canceled. Like, hey guys, you want to like support Kings of the North? It's like, didn't you pick Jackson Arnold to win the Heisman? Yeah. So anyway, I just have to own that. I have to own my ignorance and attempt to learn from it. But you did pick Abdul Carter 3rd in the Heisman race, and you also said he would lead the nation in sacks. So to do that, he's going to have like 7 sacks against Illinois. So that's why I gave you, when we were figuring out what we do, it's like, you take Penn State defense versus Illinois offense because Abdul Carter's your guy.
Yeah, this has not gone the way I think anyone anticipated moving Abdul Carter to edge. He has 4 pressures this year and only 1 sack, but I actually think it's a good place to start the conversation because I think that is somewhat emblematic of maybe like what Penn State isn't this year on defense, which is like they're still very good on defense. Like they're number 10 in the country in yards per play. They're still like a top 20 defense, top 15 defense in defensive efficiency. But this was a defense that really smothered teams last year, and thus far it has not been that. Like I realized they just put it on Kent State, but like West Virginia didn't put up a boatload of points, but they can move the ball okay. And like Bowling Green moved the ball really well against Penn State's defense. So I'm curious to see what we get out of Penn State's defense in this game, because there has been a little bit of like statistical slippage, right? Like defensive efficiency last year, they were 7th. This year, they're 12th. Points per drive last year, they were 6th. This year, they're 24th. Touchdown rate last year, they were 8th. This year, they're 19th. First down rate last year, they were 2nd, one of the best defenses in the country getting off the field. This year, they're 68th.
Oh wow!
Last year,
that's an interesting stat.
Last year, Penn State led the country in pressure rate. This year, it's 32nd, right? So like, it's not bad. It's still a good defense, but it's not like you could make a really sound argument for Penn State having the best defense in the country last year, and it has not yet played that way. Maybe that is still this group's ceiling, but I don't think it's really put that on display just yet, which then makes this matchup interesting because Illinois, I think, presents some challenges with its offense. It's balanced. It's going to run the ball. Luke Altmaier is a little bit of a dual threat. He's got 10 touchdowns and no interceptions. Like it's the best touchdown to interception ratio in the conference. He's a veteran guy who I don't think is going to get rattled by a whole lot, and the offensive line is pretty good, right? So there's a lot there with this offense that I just think can kind of keep even a good defense on its toes, right? This Penn State defense is better than Nebraska's defense, and it's not like Illinois went out there and like put it on Nebraska. Like I'm not saying that the greatest show on turf is coming to Beaver Stadium, but it is a functional offense with multiple ways of beating you. And this is a defense with Tom Allen as a new defensive coordinator that I think is still trying to figure out exactly what it is and how it wants to go about its business. And also, by the way, like is missing some important players. Like we talked about KJ Winston, the safety is going to be out for a while. It sounds like Penn State's also going to be without Dom DeLuca, who's like a backup linebacker who plays a lot. And if he doesn't play, I think Penn State will be turning towards some true freshmen to maybe get some important snaps in this game. So it's not, I don't know that I view Penn State's defense is like totally vulnerable, but I think there are ways to attack it that just like last year always kind of felt like a losing proposition. It's like, well, we're playing Penn State. I hope we can score 2 touchdowns. And I don't know that that's what Penn State is right now defensively.
We have Steven in the chat saying Manny Diaz last year was a much more aggressive coach with a few better pieces, but he thinks they'll be okay against Illinois. I mean, we all thought like the Tom Allen hire to replace Manny Diaz when he goes to be the head coach at Duke. That's a good hire. Tom Allen is a good defensive coach, but it's hard. It's one of those things like, if you only had this and this at the same time. It was a lights out defense last year that wasn't functional offensively in the way you want to be. And now they make the offensive coordinator hire and the offense is much better. And we'll get to that in a second, but it's not a bad defense, but maybe it's not great. But do you think Illinois will be able to run the ball? Like Illinois has been a little up and down with the rushing attack, right?
I don't know that they're going to run all over them, right? That like Illinois' MO has been sort of like to stick with the run and hope that they wear you down by the time the fourth quarter rolls around, which was kind of the way it happened against Kansas and the way it happened against Nebraska. You just start seeing like runs that are going for 2 or 3 yards start turning into 6, 7, 8 yards, and like they're starting to string together first downs, and all of a sudden they're down the field and they're scoring and they're winning the game. Like, but again, that's a different proposition against this defense. Like I would couch it as this is probably like a great defense, but perhaps not an elite defense. And like, so however you want to take that, I guess, like, I still think it's a very good defense. I still think I don't know. I'd probably still say Ohio State has the best defense in the Big Ten, but Penn State has a chance to have the best defense in the Big Ten, I think, based off the personnel. So it's a good group. I don't know that I'm anticipating Illinois just like showing up to Beaver Stadium on a Saturday night and just like running it down Penn State's throat. I don't think Penn State's defense is like that kind of vulnerable.
So listen, I gotta do something real quick, which is also silence my phone. We're definitely always going to be respectful on this show, but we also want the banners to reflect what's happening in the sport. So Pitt is off this week. And I was like, well, I got to put up the Pitt banner for Pat Narduzzi. But I just put Pitt in the Penn State spot, and I was going to put Penn State back up during the break, and I forgot. So hold on.
Okay. This is great. This is like watching Mr. Rogers change his shoes. Look at that. Like a NASCAR pit crew.
And Mr. Rogers is from Pittsburgh, and this is a Mr. Rogers Funko Pop. And it's because it reminds me to not be a huge jerkwad all the time. That I have like 8%. I'm a 92% jerkwad, and the 8% of Mr. Rogers inside of me is constantly fighting against it. And so I'm going to put him right here. Look, hey, Mr. Rogers, how you doing here? Try to be nice about football today. So this is a great game. I'm stunned that it's an 18-point line. But the other thing that I'm wondering about is, what if it turns out that Illinois is good and Penn State's one of the 5 best teams in the country? Which is, I think, what I don't think, and a line is just a line. But if Penn State I think the way that this is like a 3-touchdown game is not that Illinois is a fraud or that Illinois isn't good. It's that Penn State is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't, because you and I both hit that 17 and a half, 18 and a half point line right away. And we have people in the YouTube chat saying they hit it also. But so like, that's the question, especially at home, at night, that place can be a gladiator pit.
Yeah.
And if they have a more dangerous, explosive offense, and it turns out the defense is very good. It's been good so far. Maybe it's not great, but it's very good. If the defense plays its best game and the offense keeps doing what it's doing, now we're talking about like, can that version of Penn State make a college football playoff semifinal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what happens, then it's like, oh, okay, that was 38-14, and I think Penn State can beat Georgia. That's how we get there, and that has to be at least on the table. I think
it's on the table, and the dynamic with Penn State last year is like that defense had to be as good as it was, right? Because the offense just wasn't holding up its end of the bargain. So if this defense is something less than that, and again, like still I think very good, but something less than it was last year, I think it's probably okay because this offense is vastly improved. I think through Penn State's 3 games, I think you can say and probably should say that the offense has been better than the defense. And if that's the case and both are still good, like Penn State's in a pretty nice spot, I think. And I do think it's possible that spread, while I bet against it, like is accurate only because we haven't really given enough credit yet to how improved Penn State's offense is.
Yeah. That we got, they had a bye week and they had a goofy game against Bowling Green, but it's like, otherwise it's like, oh, like they got a nice win at West Virginia and they blew somebody out. So let's go to the other side. Let's go to Penn State offense versus Illinois defense. Explosive. It was the entire conversation in the offseason and the preseason. It's all James Franklin has talked about. It's why he hired Andy Kotelnicki as the offensive coordinator. And then they're emphasizing it in the game notes. Penn State has been one of the most explosive offenses in the country. Penn State writes of itself, which is what you should do in your game notes. And I appreciate all the sports information directors and their staffs around the country who provide great game notes. Second in the nation in 10-plus yard play percentage. So it's not just how many plays of 10 yards or more you have. It's like how many of your total snaps. A third of their plays are going for more than 10 yards.
Mm-hmm.
That seems very good and very anti-Penn State of the past. They're 12th in play percentage of 40 yards or more. They're overall second in the nation in big play percentage. So this whole they are attacking people. Drew Aller's average depth of target. I love A-Dot. Do you love A-Dot? Of like everyone finds their own little stats. That's just how long the ball is in the air on throws you're making. Yeah. Right. And it's like on average is this is where you find one of those. Oregon's offense is really efficient, but their quarterback throws the ball in the air for 5 yards every throw. And it tells you something about how you play. I love A-Dot. You love A-Dot or you just like A-Dot?
No, I like average depth of target and I like air yards per attempt. I think is also a good metric to use there when you're trying to discern how aggressive a team is being throwing the ball down the field. Yeah.
Drew Aller, average depth of target last year, 8 yards. This year, 12.4. That's nearly that's a 50% increase. So they are attacking. Tyler Warren, one of the best tight ends in the country, 16 catches on 18 targets for 226. Receivers, not great, but Trey Wallace and Omari Evans give them a little something. The running backs are great. We've seen the return of Nick Singleton.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by it, but isn't it nice to see Nick Singleton, who had a slump last year, 37 carries, 314 yards, 8.5 yards per carry. Katron Allen, their other back, 35 carries for 187, 5.3 yards. We've talked a lot about Caleb Johnson on the show. We love Caleb Johnson from Iowa. If Katron Allen and Nick Singleton were one back, they'd be averaging 167 yards per game and 6.9 yards per carry. There's a lot of places that have two great backs. This is one of the best duos in the country. And I think Nick Singleton is back, Landis, to being like a legitimate game breaker.
Yeah, I think so too. He got through whatever was going on last year. I mean, he's not the first guy we've seen go through that in a second year, but he's on the other side of it fully. Like it's because they're not merely Penn State is not merely explosive throwing the ball. Like what makes them threatening is that they're doing it on the ground too, right? There's been a couple of long runs for both Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. So, and the offensive line I think has blocked pretty well too for those guys. So, and like the design helps, right? It's the same thing I think that's going on with Chip Kelly at Ohio State. It's like, yeah, your offensive line can play better. Yes, your backs can play with more confidence, but it also helps to have a guy just like scheming some stuff up and like really, confounding defenses with play design that gets you running backs in space. When you get Nick Singleton or Katron Allen in space, you're going to have a good time. So the running game looks vastly improved as well, and it's efficient and explosive. Drew Aller, by the way, is number 2 in the country in yards per attempt this year, which is like kind of crazy. Given
one of the other
where he was
when
last year.
When you sort on PFF on passing depth last year, 58% of the passes Drew Aller threw last year were at or behind, or like were within like 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. Like 58% of his throws were short. This year's it's only 41%.
Yeah.
So he's throwing middle, he's throwing deep. They're actually attacking. And you've brought this up multiple times, and it's just a really coincidental thing with the schedule that Illinois played Kansas last year and this year. Andy Kotelnicki was the offensive coordinator at Kansas last year, and now he's the offensive coordinator at Penn State. And Illinois is playing Penn State. So this has been a story that we've talked about in the last 3 weeks, both ways. Aaron Henry was the first-year defensive coordinator at Illinois last year, and Kansas blew their doors off. And Andy Kotelnicki helped him learn. And Aaron Henry talked about that again this week. This is the Illinois defensive coordinator, because now he's going against Kotelnicki at Penn State. Andy Kotelnicki is going to be a head coach one day, and you can see why, Aaron Henry said. He stresses defenses. When I told you guys I watched the Kansas game over 100 times in the offseason, that was probably on the low end. Andy has literally made me change how I view defensive play because of how he does things. Taking his offense from Kansas and doing elements of it and adding his own tweak to what he's doing at Penn State. I mean, they brought him on at Penn State for a reason. We are really looking forward to that. He has a lot of respect for me and our staff, and obviously throughout college football, for what he does offensively. Love this matchup because Aaron Henry is doing a great job, and they have playmakers in the secondary. They're getting after the passer. They blitzed Dylan Raiola last week against Nebraska on almost half the snaps. They are aggressive, but he learned from the failures last year, and now he is facing the coach that made him learn. And Aaron Henry is doing a great job, and Andy Kotelnicki is doing a great job, and let's go.
Yeah, I think this is where the game is decided, I think, right? Do you feel that way too? Like which of those two guys kind of gets the upper hand there? Because I might actually give, I don't know, like Barry Lunny Jr., the Illinois offensive coordinator, has done a pretty good job thus far. I like on job performance, I might give him an edge over Tom Allen right now.
Okay.
But Kotelnicki and Henry have both done excellent jobs, and this is sort of like kind of coming to a head now, like who's going to get the best of this particular chess match. It's fascinating that like Aaron Henry was even that honest about what Kansas did to Illinois last year, like how much that influenced them, because I don't know coaches would be that forthright. That makes me excited to see what Illinois brings to the table defensively. I think they'll challenge Penn State. Like I think they will. That secondary I think is pretty solid, right? And I don't like Penn State. Penn State's receivers I do think are very much improved. And James Franklin was talking this week about how he wishes people would like write more about how much better their receivers are, because they certainly wrote about how bad they were last year, which I guess is a fair point, because I do think Trey Wallace and Omari Evans in particular have unlocked a little something more for Penn State at that position. But I think it's a really fun matchup with the secondary of Illinois. I wonder how much Illinois will be able to get after Drew Aller. I think that's probably the key. Like if they can get after him and put him on the ground, certainly, but even just like kind of pressure him is probably might be more specifically where the game is won and lost.
So they blitzed Dylan Raiola 46% of snaps last week. Drew Aller so far this season has been blitzed on 38% of snaps, but he's handled it. Like he's actually handled the blitz pretty well. And so that will be interesting. It feels like Drew Aller has really, Andy Kotelnicki has unlocked him a little bit, and he has made a leap on his own. And so I think they do have to get after him. But last week they got after a freshman. And now this week they're going to get after a junior second-year starter. And Aaron Henry was even saying this, like, no, Dylan Raiola is great. Henry said Drew Aller is just as talented, if not more, but he's certainly more experienced. So I will be curious how much Illinois comes after Aller and how much Aller can make them pay if they do, but also playmakers in the secondary for Illinois who aren't afraid to read and react and make a play. So if you get some of that, this is a guy, again, I think Illinois will have a pick. But Penn State can't stop. Penn State can't stop doing what they're doing if that happens. They can't turtle if Illinois comes out and gets on them. I think they have to. I imagine Illinois' defense will be aggressive, but I think Penn State has to meet Illinois' defensive aggression with offensive aggression. Mm-hmm. And if they turtle, I think Illinois has them where they want them.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't know that either of these teams is going to turtle on either side of the ball. Like,
yes,
I think it's going to get a little pointy because of that.
And I do think like maybe, and this is like, I don't mean it to be a criticism of James Franklin, but it's like, okay, like you get, like we tried that. It didn't work. It was a pick. Like, let's run the ball. And Andy Kotelnicki's like going to turn his headset off. It's like, no, we're not. Like, we're going to do what we do. We're not going to stop just because something went wrong in the first 12 minutes. Yeah. This is the third time that Brett Bielema and James Franklin will have coached against each other. You remember the first one, Landis?
Was that the Big Ten championship? Or no, was Burt gone by then?
Burt was gone by then.
Yeah, he was gone by then. Yeah.
It was the sixth.
The nine overtime.
The nine overtime game.
Yeah.
The 9 overtime game. In 2021, Illinois beat Penn State 20-18 in 9 overtimes. That was like the unveiling of like Brett Bielema does not have much to work with, but he will find a way. But Penn State did get him back last year. Penn State won 30-13. So they're 1-1 head on here. This is like a super. These guys are both good coaches. It's like a great like tier 2 Big Ten matchup, or maybe it's like tier 1A when it comes to these head coaches. Like, these are big time dudes, but they're not national championship winning dudes. But this really matters for both of them. It matters more for James Franklin. Like this is the year that Penn State has to be something more. And Illinois' like preseason like win total is like 5.5, and they're already at 4.
They've already exceeded expectations.
so Brett Bielema, right? I mean, like an 8-5 year would be a great year for Illinois, given what people thought they were going to be. But Bielema Franklin is pretty good, isn't it? And I think Bielema will come in a little more letting it rip.
Yeah. But
James Franklin, I think, also has to. I don't think the answer for Penn State is to like just rely on its talent. Like, let's attack with our talent.
Yeah, I don't think it's not like just let your talent win, or like just like show up and try to like out execute them. It's like, no, like you bring a little something to this, right? I think both teams will. I just watching Brett Bielema during the week, like he seems rather loose. Why wouldn't he be feeling good about his team right now, especially winning on the road at Nebraska? Like that's the biggest thing. It'd be one thing if Illinois had just found a way to be 4-0 coming into this game playing whoever, but it's like they're 4-0 with like a serious road win at Nebraska on a Friday night, right? Like that tells me something about that team, and it should have them feeling confident coming into this game. So no, I think Brett Bielema threw a 4th down touchdown pass to an offensive lineman last week, right? He's going to come into this game, he's going to let it rip. So I just think James Franklin has to match that, and that probably would run counter a little bit to James Franklin in big games, right? Like that's the criticism of James. Like he coaches it a little tight, a little close to the vest when it's like it's a matchup game. But does he view this as a matchup game, or is there merely just a number next to Illinois' name, right? That's the other part of it. So I think Penn State will come with a similar mindset to Illinois. Okay, so who you got? Who you picking? I'm picking Penn State. Again, I think it's going to get a little higher scoring. So I have Penn State winning 35-28. I think there's a ton of big plays in this game. Okay. I have Penn State 31-21. And again, we are both comfortably within Illinois getting 17 points in this. So I think, and this is the thing again, it's like why I rant about things. Illinois is good enough that if Penn State does blow out Illinois, even at home with a raucous crowd, pay attention. That will get my attention because I think Illinois is a winning football team. Yeah. And I hope James Franklin lets it go. Right. And I think they will. Like that's the expectation. If you flip it on and you have Georgia, Alabama on your other TV or whatever, you could do a 4-box, but just make sure you have the audio on Illinois Penn State. Is that allowed? We're going to allow a 4-box? Yeah. For people?
Yeah.
You had $4. Yeah.
Only flip to Georgia, Alabama, like if Carson Beck fumbles or something. But if Penn State's coming out and running like on 3rd and 7, throw into the tight end 4 yards short of the sticks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you should turn it off or if you and I should like get in the car and drive to Pennsylvania and be like, James, what are you doing? Like that.
Yeah.
That can't be the world.
No, I will say though, since you mentioned it, like throwing the ball to Tyler Warren in this game might be a good course of action for Penn State. Like I could see, we'll talk about all these matchups and like who's the guy that pops and like really kind of wins the game for Penn State. I don't think I'd be terribly surprised if it's Tyler Warren, their tight end. He's really good.
Yeah, by far the most targets on the team. I mean, they know he's their best guy. So, okay, we are both picking Penn State in this one, but closer than the betting line. All right, we're going to run through a couple quick games now. Games that aren't quite as interesting. We'll just do some short stuff on this. We'll start with Holy Cross at Syracuse. And the reason we get to talk about this is interesting because Holy Cross's quarterback from last year has set college football on fire because he transferred to UNLV and then he left and everybody said, what about the brotherhood? And he said, what brotherhood are you talking about? I've been in Las Vegas for 3 months. It's an extended vacation. I don't even know these guys. But with him at quarterback, Matt Sluka, is that right?
Sluka, yeah.
Matt Sluka. They Holy Cross only lost to Boston College 31-28 last year because Matt Sluka ran for 131 yards on 19 carries. Joe Pazanski, who was the backup last year at Holy Cross, is now the starter. And Holy Cross is coming off a 38-31 loss to Yale last week. Yale's quarterback will probably be somewhere in the Mountain West next year, demanding more money. The whole thing's a mess. I'm not blaming the quarterback. Fran Brown, we talked about it on the Monday show, and as we were talking about it, Fran Brown was saying it. Fran Brown took 100% responsibility for the man coverage that allowed Stanford to complete a 4th and 9 first down conversion that won the game last week. He said it like 10 times. That's completely on Coach Brown. It was my bad. It's on myself. It's not on anyone else. I put Clarence Lewis in a bad situation. That's completely on me, not the defensive coordinator, not Clarence Lewis. It's 100% on me. Like he just said it 1,000 times. And it's like, well, we agree with that. I think Syracuse bounces back in a big way. I have 38-17 Syracuse.
Yeah, I have Syracuse bouncing back in an even bigger way. I have 56-7. Holy Cross has been a good FCS program, but as we just mentioned, Matt Sluka left. Their coach Bob Chesney left to go take the James Madison job. So it's a program that's I think like rebuilding a little bit. And Syracuse is angry. I think it takes its frustrations out on Holy Cross.
Angry Q's. Q's probably without Zeed Haynes, one of their better receivers who still is out dealing with some family stuff. All right. Oregon at UCLA. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but probably not a close game.
Yeah, probably not. It's Big Ten After Dark. It's at 11 p.m. on Fox. Illinois. Oregon has owned this matchup of late. Has won 10 of the last 11. It's 15-3 since 2000 against UCLA. This should get out of hand. I think UCLA's defense is quite bad. Gave up almost 7 yards per play against Indiana, 6.5 almost last week against LSU. It has felt like maybe Oregon is finding its stride a little bit. It'll be interesting. Oregon didn't play last week, so like coming off of a good win and then like kind of having to like throttle down, like can they really rev it back up and have that offense humming against UCLA? I bet that they do. The one thing for Oregon, and I know you talked about it a little bit with Tyson Alger earlier in the week, Matthew Bedford, the transfer offensive lineman, is hurt again, another injury setback. So the offensive line that they kind of settled on in the Oregon State game, which is Pancho Lalaulu at center and Nishad Strother at left guard and Marcus Harper at right guard, that is the line for at least for now. We'll see whether or not Matthew Bedford can get back in. But I thought that line like started to build some momentum in the last game, so it should be fine in this game. UCLA is not very good, so I have Oregon winning 56-13.
I have 51-10. Oregon's only favored by 25.5, and I do mean that only. I thought this could be like a 38-point line. So this isn't a betting show, but I might bet Oregon in that one. Wisconsin at USC. It's 3:30 on CBS. Wisconsin was off last week after their loss to Alabama. CJ Williams, one of their receivers, used to play at USC. Tackett Curtis, one of their linebackers, used to play at USC. And Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator who dragged down Lincoln Riley, both at Oklahoma and USC, is now like the safeties coach. The safeties coach at Wisconsin, because Luke Fickell and Alex Grinch coached together at Ohio State, right? They were there together? No, I guess not. Luke was gone, but were they there together?
No, Alex Grinch was only at Ohio State for 1 year and managed to drag that defense down too. He's really good at that.
So he's not in charge of anything now, so it's fine. Luke Fickell was talking this week that he thought the run game has been efficient but not explosive. And I was checking like back when Wisconsin was really getting it done, like 2008, 17, 18, 19 back then. They would be among the national leaders in long rushing plays, and they have had like none this year. So he was talking about like, hey, we had an 11-yard play that if we had made a better block on the perimeter with a receiver, it could have been a 40-yard play. So I think they're prepared to batten down the hatches and run, but they want to be explosive when they run. I don't know that it's going to work. Yeah. I have USC 30-17. USC is also coming off a loss last week to Michigan.
Yeah, I have USC winning 35-10. I'm glad to hear that maybe that's the way that they want to start to transform this offense at Wisconsin, because I think that's especially necessary with the quarterback situation and Tyler Van Dyke being out. And turning it over to Braden Locke. But yeah, I don't know that it's going to be terribly effective, because it's not even Michigan didn't run the ball down USC's throat, right? Michigan had like 4 long rushing plays that won them the game, but like down to down, it was not an efficient rushing attack for Michigan against USC. So I don't know why Wisconsin would suddenly have one against USC. I think that USC defense is for real, regardless of what happened last week. I don't think Wisconsin can do much of anything in this game.
All right, Ohio State at Penn State.
7:30 on Peacock. It was originally a 7 p.m. kick, and now it is a 7:30 p.m. kick on Peacock.
Get your stuff together, Peacock. We're living on Peacock on Saturday, by the way.
We are, yeah. It's a day full of Peacock exclusives. I did not realize this. Ohio State and Michigan State have played for 14 consecutive seasons.
Oh, that's nice.
It's Ohio State's 3rd longest streak of playing an opponent consecutive years, behind Penn State, which it has played 32 years in a row, and Indiana, which it has played 16 years in a row. And they're not going to play after this for a couple of years. They're not going to play again until 2027. Yeah, that's what happens when you have 18 teams in the Big Ten. Ohio State's won its last 9 games in East Lansing. Michigan State does have a history of spoiling Ohio State seasons, but that has happened, I think, in Columbus more often than it has happened in East Lansing. Michigan State is banged up. Michigan State played last week without 4 of its top 5 receivers, including Nick Marsh, a talented freshman. There's been no word yet this week on if they'll get any of those guys back. So it could be like the Montori Foster show against Ohio State's pretty good defense, very good defense. Ohio State does sound like it's going to have Tyleik Williams, a defensive tackle who did not play last week against Marshall, back in the lineup. So Ohio State, I think, is pretty healthy going into this game. Michigan State is banged up at other places too, not just receiver. So this should be a nice spot for Ohio State, I think, to keep rolling. I'll be curious to see if Ohio State can run the ball as well as it has now that it's going up against a defense that I think has a solid defensive front, Michigan State. So I have Ohio State winning 42-13. I just don't know that I see a pathway for Michigan State to really challenge Ohio State here.
I don't think, as much as it's nice to see Ohio State play a Big Ten team, I don't think this is the week to get super challenged. 45-13 for me. We're talking about ADOT. There's someone in the chat, Jordan says, is the most under the radar stat this year that Dylan Gabriel is completing 84% of his passes for Oregon. To that point, Dylan Gabriel has the 2nd lowest ADOT in the power conferences at 5.9 yards per attempt. So that's like he's completing a bunch of passes, but they're practically handoffs, which is like, it's not a criticism because it works, but it is one of those things like it's like how you want to go about it. Oregon wants to complete everything and short and on the move and let guys run. So it's just like, but like, I like having conversations like that.
Dylan Gabriel, 3.2 air yards per attempt, which is 12th in the Big Ten among starters. It's only better than Miller Moss, Ethan Garbers, Braden Locke, Cade McNamara, Jack Lausch, and Alex Orji.
Yeah, and you can only do what they ask you to do. But it's one of those things.
Offense.
I think
that's what
it's their offense. But I think that's one of those. It's always. I think I like when we have that conversation. You pair like completion percentage with air yards or average depth of target, and then you can find an answer there. Iowa State at Houston. Houston, I think, is terrible. This is 7:00 on FS1. Matt Campbell can break the record. He tied it last week for most wins all time for an Iowa State head coach. I think Iowa State is perhaps very good. I think they're pretty good at everything. And I am waiting for them to kind of sneak up on America. I think this is easy. I have 31-3 Iowa State.
I have 38-14. This is only a 2-touchdown spread too. Like it feels like it should be more coming off a game where Houston just got shut out by Cincinnati. Like I agree with you on Iowa State, but I also want to see like Iowa State put that on the field on Saturday. Like go blow out a bad team, even though it is on the road. So I have 38-14 comfortable win, but I'll take a 49-3 too if Iowa State wants to do that just to show me a little something.
Yeah. All right. Western Kentucky at Boston College.
Yeah, first time these two teams have ever played. Kai Robichaux, former Western Kentucky running back, now at Boston College. He only played one snap last week against Michigan State. He was their top running back last year, and right now he's their third running back, like statistically, production-wise, behind Trayshawn Ward and Turbo Richard. I don't know if Kai Robichaux is going to play this week. Bill O'Brien made it sound like he might be able to give it a go. It's not anything super serious or long-term. But this is also a game that Boston College should probably win without him. So I guess keep an eye on whether or not he plays. Alabama ran all over Western Kentucky, and then Western Kentucky hasn't played a power conference team since then. So I think you probably see BC run it all over Western Kentucky too. I have BC winning 38-17.
Western Kentucky beat Toledo last week after I gave Jason Candle a sword.
Yeah, I know. It's Toledo.
I think it's close. I'm not worried, but Boston College, I think, has expended a lot of energy this year.
That's fair.
They beat Florida State. They went on the road at Missouri, who everybody thinks is a playoff team, and were ahead and only lost by one score. Then they came home in the rain in the red bandana game and beat Michigan State on a play in the last 2 minutes. It has been they've exerted an incredible amount of football energy. And now it's Western Kentucky, who is exactly the kind of team to sneak up on you if you're a little not all the way there. It's hard to be at 120%.
It is
every week. And I feel like Boston College has been like 3 out of 4 weeks. So I'm not on alert for an upset, but I'm on alert for like, oh, this is closer than I expected. So I have it 28-21 BC.
Yeah. 13-point spread. Less I looked. So.
Okay. TCU at Kansas. Maybe once upon a time you would have thought it was going to be a good game. Now nobody thinks that. 3:30 on ESPN Plus. Kansas is 1-3, and all their losses have been by one score. They're kind of stuck. Lance Leipold was saying this week he feels like they're getting conservative late in games, but I think the reason they're getting conservative is because they don't trust their quarterback. The one thing here is they are home, but it's their first home game at Arrowhead Stadium where the Chiefs play this week. Their previous 2 home games were at the soccer stadium in Kansas City, which seats like 25,000. So now they're playing in Arrowhead. I think maybe it's cool, right? You play where Patrick Mahomes plays, right? It's
cool if there are people there. I guess we'll see.
Well, I know, but wouldn't you want to go? Like. I mean, I hope people go. So, and by the way, isn't this funny? Kansas's schedule the whole year is road home, road home, road home, road home, road home, road home.
Oh, that is weird.
Isn't that? I guess how it should be, but it's like, so it works out. So anyway, they're playing 6 home games. 2 are at the soccer stadium. Now the final 4 will be at Arrowhead. We have basically the same score. I have Kansas 31-24.
I have Kansas 31-21. And the only thing about this game I have in my notes is Kansas run the effing ball. That's all
okay.
I wrote down there.
No, I think Lance, you want to send that to Lance? I think Lance probably has it in his notes already. All right. Quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive in on like the most interesting matchups in the North. We have 10 more left, and we'll do all of that next. Plus, what's up with the dragon statue? We'll do that at the end of the show with our fantasy picks, all on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North. Give us a like with your thumb. Subscribe. That'd be great. Tell a friend. That'd be great. Drop a review somewhere. That'd be great. Tell us something in the comments, what you like, what you don't like. That would be great. We really appreciate you guys being here. And, we're just having a good time doing the show. So these are our better games, right? I kind of wanted to get some of those bigger blowouts out of the way. BYU at Baylor, Landis. This is noon on FS1. This is only like a 2-point spread, which I don't know. I just saw BYU beat the pants off Kansas State, and I don't know that Baylor's good. I guess they should have won last week against Colorado. So I'm curious about this one.
Yeah. So we've called out spots when we thought like one of our teams was about to walk in the one. Does this feel like one to you or no?
I don't know, because I think Baylor, like, it's BYU's off a huge win. Baylor's off a devastating loss. But is Baylor any good? I guess is part of it.
I don't think Baylor is very good. Baylor's making a switch at quarterback as well. Like Sawyer Robertson has started. He had to take over for DeQuan Finn because of injury, and then he just played better than DeQuan Finn. So now it seems like he's their new starting quarterback. I don't think Dave Aranda has fully declared that, but he's been talking about Sawyer Robinson like he's going to be the starter this week. So there's that. I think there's a little more to him perhaps than there is to DeQuan Finn, and he can move around. So like we've talked about BYU giving up some quarterback rushing production this year. So I think that's at play here. I think it can get a little uncomfortable maybe for BYU. I don't know that I mean, it is like it's a field goal, I think, or less in a lot of places now. So like clearly people think it's a little bit of a toss-up game. I just think BYU's got too much defensively, right? I do believe in what this defense has put out there, and especially the way it's gotten after quarterbacks, right? So I think that they'll just kind of own the line of scrimmage and win the game. But I still don't think you know what you're going to get from Jake Retzlaff week to week, right? He can be loose with the football at times, and perhaps when a quarterback is playing confidently, that's when you worry about it the most, right? Because he thinks he can make every throw in the world. So I'm a little bit on alert for that too, but I do think the defense still wins the game for BYU.
And he's the best quarterback in this game. So he hasn't been perfect, but they're in a better situation than Baylor's quarterback situation, where DeQuan Finn, son of the North, wish he would have stayed North. Yeah. I think BYU wins, but I think they sit on them. I have 23-13 BYU. I think it's low scoring, defensive minded.
Yeah, I have 28-21. Same idea.
Cincinnati at Texas Tech. This is an 8:00 game on ESPN2. You put this in one of your boxes too, and again, maybe pay more attention than you pay attention to Alabama, Georgia. Cincinnati at home last week was a blackout. Now this game at Texas Tech is a blackout because everybody loves black. Cincinnati on the year is 3 for 3 on fourth down, which is as good as you can get. And their opponents are 3 for 10 on fourth down. So I like the idea that Cincinnati is like making people try things and then stopping them. They're really balanced. 270 throwing it per game, 200 running it per game. Really good EPA per play on their dropbacks. Like Brendan Sorsby is just like playing really good ball. Corey Kleiner is a very good back. They're not quite as efficient running the ball. They throw it to Xavier Henderson and Joe Royer, and they don't really need to throw it to anybody else. And Brendan Sorsby in 127 dropbacks has one turnover-worthy play. That's it. The only 3 quarterbacks in the power conferences who have more dropbacks and that few turnover-worthy plays are Brady Cook at Missouri, Haynes King at Georgia Tech, and Shedeur Sanders, by the way, who is a one-man offense and is not like putting the ball in harm's way, which is miraculous. But I think Cincinnati is quite a competent. You pick Texas Tech. I think Cincinnati is quite a competent football team. And you can see like Scott Satterfield is a little cha-cha-cha. Like I thought, having been to the Cincinnati Pitt game, both those fan bases, and I think both those coaches, I think both fan bases were like, I don't know. And both coaches were like, ugh. And they're both like, Pitt was lifted by that comeback win against Cincinnati, but Cincinnati did not let it doom them. I like where Cincinnati is. Why are you picking Texas Tech, brother? I have Cincinnati 31-23.
I don't disagree with anything you said about Cincinnati. I kind of feel like Texas Tech, is a fairly competent team as well. Like it lost to Washington State, had a very weird opener against Abilene Christian that it won in overtime by a point, and then lost to Washington State, and everyone was waiting for it to, I think, unravel on Joey McGuire down there. And they've turned it around. Granted, they turned it around against North Texas and Arizona State, which I think has also come back down to earth too. So I'm maybe making too much of Texas Tech just kind of rebounding from a little bit of a wonky start, but like they got a good quarterback in Baron Morton. They're going to throw it around. Taj Brooks is a really good running back. Like I actually don't think Cincinnati's defense is that good. So I could actually see this being incredibly high scoring. Like if both these teams are in the 40s, I don't think I'd be shocked by that.
Okay.
Because Texas Tech has played some games with some crooked numbers so far this year. I just think if it is a little bit of a shootout, I think I'll take Texas Tech at home. But if Cincinnati wins, I don't think it's going to floor me.
I think there's enough of like what Pitt did to come back and beat Cincinnati is kind of what Texas Tech is going to do. And that worked. So like I see where you're coming from because it's all the way in Texas. Colorado at UCF.
It's 3:30 on Fox, but it's getting the big noon kickoff treatment. The gang, Urban and the boys, are going down to Orlando. I guess they just wanted to give Urban an easy week, right? He can just kind of like roll out of bed and drive over to Orlando from wherever he lives in Florida for the Saturday show. Nice. So that'll be nice. These teams have also never played before. UCF wants to run it down your throat. UCF leads the country with 375 rushing yards per game on the backs of RJ Harvey, Penny Boone, Miles Montgomery, and quarterback KJ Jefferson, who I think had a little bit of a thing when they played TCU, like a cramp or something, and people were wondering if he was going to play. He's supposed to play in this game, so that rushing attack should be coming full bore for Colorado, who I don't think can stop the run against anybody. So I think that's kind of all you need to know about this game. You can throw on UCF. TCU threw on UCF, so I could see Colorado keeping pace that way. But I don't think this is going to be a fun game for Colorado's defense.
I picked Colorado. It's a 14-point spread. I kind of refuse to believe that UCF is good based on nothing. So I'm going to put my pick where my interest isn't. UCF might be, well, no, there's probably like among the 68 teams in the power conferences that I care the least about and know the least about. UCF is in probably the bottom 5. So then Colorado has 2 famous players. So don't bet based on me. Players. They had 2 FM. This is one of those. Every now and then there's going to be one of those where I don't do any football research because Landis is in charge of that game. And this is one of those. So I took the famous guys, and we've had enough discussions about like, the Big 12, whatever. And you always say, well, UCF too. And I'm always like, they're in the southern part of the Big 12. I don't want to talk about them. So I don't want to talk about them. So maybe Colorado can win in triple overtime on 6 Hail Marys.
Yeah, I don't think like UCF had to come back and beat TCU, and I don't think TCU is very good. So I don't think UCF's a juggernaut. I don't think a team that wants to be as physical as UCF is on offense is a great matchup for Colorado. But the one thing, like I think the thing you worry about most when you're worried about like trying to analyze a Colorado game is this team going to sack Shedeur Sanders 9 times? UCF does not generate a ton of pressure. So like Colorado has that going for it. And like I said, like TCU threw on them. So it could be, again, this is a game I think that could get pretty pointsy with UCF running it and Colorado throwing it. But I have UCF winning 42-24.
I was going to ask T. Shu on the betting show if I could take Colorado plus 14, but Colorado on the money line, that's an underdog pick. And I'm sure he would have been like, the math says no. So I didn't even ask. So, because my pick is based on nothing. Heisman moment for Travis Hunter. And then he can say, I'm going to Disney World. Washington at Rutgers, 8:00 Friday on Fox. I'd watch this. Rutgers defense is like, by EPA, is really good against the pass and not so good against the run. I'm curious if Washington's going to try to run it on Rutgers in this one, because Jonah Coleman is pretty good. 373 yards in 4 games, 6.7 yards per carry. Brennan Carroll, the Washington offensive coordinator, was talking about they're expecting Rutgers to pressure the quarterback. Rutgers blitzed 43% of the time against Virginia Tech last week, and it really worked against Virginia Tech. They did not handle the blitz very well at all. I do feel like Ethan Cadillac-Manis is kind of doing what's asked of him. His yards per attempt went from 6.2 last year at Minnesota to 9 this year at Rutgers. His completion percentage is 10 points higher. Like, he's doing what they asked. And I feel like maybe Rutgers is vulnerable, like can play the pass, is vulnerable to the run, but that, like, I don't know if Washington isn't the team to exploit their weakness or take advantage of the. So I like Rutgers here, and also it's 2,800 miles away. So I think I'm excited to watch it. I certainly think Washington could win, but I also think it could be like this travel stunk. Not only is it on the other side of the country, it's on Friday night.
Short rest, yeah.
And then we tried to come out and throw it, and we couldn't at all. And then we tried to run it, and that's not what we do. So I have it close, but I have it Rutgers. And if Rutgers is going to win 10 games, they have to win this one.
Yeah, I think it's close. I think it's low scoring, low possession. I think both teams will try to run the ball. Washington's run defense has been really good this year. It hasn't really seen a rushing attack the way that Rutgers is going to try to do it. Like the best rushing attack Washington has seen is Washington State, which is just like John Mateer running like a madman. And last week against Northwestern, Cam Porter, the really talented Northwestern running back, didn't play against Washington. So they had a good day there. So, but I think Rutgers will find a way to get to what it wants to get to offensively enough to win the game. But I think it's going to be like pretty tight the whole way and very low scoring. And the other thing, did you see what Greg Schiano said about Steve Belichick this week? The Washington defensive coordinator.
Like he's like a son to him. What'd he say?
Well, Steve Belichick is a former Rutgers lacrosse player who walked on 1 year for the football team, was a long snapper for Greg Schiano. And Greg Schiano told a story about how when Steve Belichick was on the football team, like his job was like basically to like stand next to Greg Schiano and tell Greg whether or not he was like overusing the same signal too many times. And Greg Schiano said like, hey, if I like use this signal too many times, just like give me a tap, let me know that I'm doing it so I can switch it up. And he said the one play, he like used the same signal twice, and Steve Belichick like reared back and like punched him right in the gut. And Greg Schiano was like, why'd you hit me so hard? And he said, well, you told me to tap you if you made the same signal. I was like, yeah, but I didn't say knock the wind out of me. But that's the passion. That's the passion to see Belichick bringing the game. He's punching Greg Schiano on the sideline.
Wow. I think they're similarly matched teams. I think the circumstances lean Rutgers. So I have 28-25 Rutgers, higher scoring than you have.
2017 Rutgers for me. Yeah.
Arizona, Utah.
Yeah, 10:15. It's a late night banger in Salt Lake City on ESPN. We are playing the game again. Will Cam Rising play football for the Utah Utes on Saturday? Kyle Whittingham shined a little more light on that situation this week. Cam Rising had the glove on. He went through all the warm-ups. I think they were anticipating him playing or hopeful that he could play. And then Kyle Whittingham said in pregame warm-ups, like he just did not have, Cam Rising did not have enough velocity on his throws and wasn't quite feeling right. So they decided to play Isaac Wilson, the freshman at quarterback. I'm assuming the same thing will play out this week. Like I am anticipating that we'll see Isaac Wilson, because the other thing is Utah is off next week. So if you can afford to give Cam Rising another week to not play and then get that extra week of rest and then come back on the other side and have Cam Rising ready to go, I think that would be Utah's preference. And I think like Arizona's a decent team, but we also saw Kansas State, I think, kind of shut down really the only thing that Arizona is capable of, which is throwing the ball with Noah Fafita. So I think Utah's going to get after Noah Fafita and win this game. I could see a little bit of a hangover right from the win at Oklahoma State, especially with a young quarterback. So that's something to watch. And Arizona's coming off of an off week, so maybe it's tighter. But I have Utah winning 31-20 because I just don't know that Arizona has a whole lot going on besides that passing attack.
I have Utah a little tighter, 27-23. Is Arizona just Colorado? They have a good quarterback and one other extraordinary player, but they're not really a good team.
Yeah, I would say probably, but like Arizona, I think was supposed to have like a halfway decent offensive line this year, and it just didn't look that way against Kansas State. Maybe that was just a bad day.
They didn't compete.
And if that's the case, if that was a bad day, then maybe this game is closer than I think. But it's an 11-point spread for Utah at home. So
yeah. All right, Nebraska at Purdue. I thought about going to this game, and then they both lost last week, and so I didn't plan. I'm not going to go. Matt Rule is focused on running the ball. They want to run the ball better, so I'm curious to see if they just come out and pound Purdue, because everybody's run the ball on Purdue this year. The one thing for Purdue is Nyland Green, the transfer quarterback from Georgia who has not played, I guess is expected back this week. That would be very helpful. Purdue has forced no turnovers. The only two FBS teams in the country that have not forced a turnover are Purdue and Troy. And Nebraska is still kind of working some stuff out in the offensive line. They lost their left tackle in the preseason. Then their other left tackle got hurt last week, and they put in Gunnar Gatula, a young guy who played pretty well at left tackle last week, and they think that they'll probably do that again. So it's just a tough spot with offensive line injuries, and Nebraska's dealing with it. But I think last week we were talking, do they let Dylan Raiola let it rip against Illinois? And I think they might have Dylan Raiola throw it 15 times and just run until Purdue stops it, and Purdue won't. So I have Nebraska 34-14. You're picking Purdue. No, you're not. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm not. I'm picking Nebraska 28-13. Thinking along the same lines as you. Purdue has allowed 703 rushing yards in its last 2 games against Notre Dame and Oregon State. Nebraska is not built like either of those teams, I think is probably worth mentioning, but it has at times looked like a fairly effective team running the ball. And I think Matt Rule is probably following the correct course of action here, which is to try to run the ball against Purdue. And I think it will. It only had 48 rushing yards last week against Illinois. So it's not like this has been a machine running the ball in Nebraska's offense, but I think this is probably an opportunity for them to feel a little better about their ability to run the ball.
Louisville at Notre Dame, 3:30 on Peacock.
Yep, Peacock exclusive. 5th meeting all time between Louisville and Notre Dame. Series is tied 2-2. Louisville won last year 33-20. And it's just like, can Notre Dame keep winning this way on offense with the Riley Leonard option spectacular? Like, I don't know. Like, it's Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Prince, like a pretty good offensive line. It's not the worst idea in the world, right? It's looked pretty good for Notre Dame the last 2 weeks. Louisville's good. Like, Louisville has only played one power conference team, but it played Georgia Tech last week. It won. It held Georgia Tech to 98 rushing yards, which is the fewest Georgia Tech has had since last October. So I think this Louisville defense is legit. I think the team is legit. I think it's a tough spot for Notre Dame because Notre Dame is fully one-dimensional on offense, and I don't know that you win big games that way. I know like Michigan found a way to do it last week, but that was the debut of that Michigan offense. This is now the 3rd week of the Riley Leonard we only run the ball offense, and I think Louisville will be ready for it. So I have Louisville winning 23-20.
So I shared most of my thoughts on this on Tuesday when Dan Wetzel and I talked about this game. But if Notre Dame can't beat Louisville in September, then like, where is Notre Dame?
Mm-hmm.
If they're 2-2 and they're not in a conference and they're not going to make the playoff and their schedule's not that interesting for the rest of the year, and like, where are they? They're going to vanish. They're going to vanish. So I'm looking at this game for Notre Dame, much like I looked at the Michigan game last week. It's like, if you don't win this, like, where are you? And your fans aren't going to abandon you, but you're just not going to matter to anybody else for the rest of the year. So I picked Notre Dame like based on that because a whole lot of people thought Notre Dame was going to be a playoff team. Mm-hmm. And if Notre Dame is just gone before October, it's going to be weird. So this is like a back against the wall kind of spot for them, I think, yes. Right?
Yeah, I think it is for sure. It's the Irish wear green game, by the way. But I guess like Notre Dame doesn't always wear green when they play. Like it's a thing that fans are frustrated about. They tell the entire stadium to wear green, and like sometimes the players don't wear green. I think they've only actually worn green twice since Marcus Freeman has been the head coach, including last year against Ohio State when they lost at home. It's also not a night game. I think they were anticipating this being a night game when they announced it as a wear green game, and now it's not. It's a 3:30 kick. So yeah, it's a back against the wall moment for Notre Dame. I think it's Notre Dame is also favored. The last I looked anyway was 6.5, which I was a little surprised by, given how Notre Dame has played and how good Louisville has looked. So yeah, it's a game that Notre Dame can win. I think, right? Because I do think that rushing attack can still be potent, even if it's the only thing Notre Dame can do. I just don't know, and Notre Dame's defense is really good too. Like I don't think Louisville is going to go nuts on Notre Dame's defense either. So it's close and I think low scoring, but I like Louisville to win it.
I like green's my favorite color. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
I like when Notre Dame wears green. I hope they wear green. Yeah. I think the green looks cool. Minnesota at Michigan. The total for this game is 35.5.
I know. It feels like an Iowa game.
I did pick Notre Dame 24-23 if I didn't say that. Yeah, it feels like an Iowa game. And because here's the thing, if you're Minnesota, like Minnesota in the second half last week couldn't stop Iowa's run game. It's like, oh, hey guys, sorry I couldn't stop Iowa's run game. Who you got this week? Team that only runs? Cool.
We got Big Army. Big Army is coming to town this week.
They can't tackle? Like PJ Fleck was like, it's like, hey, what's up with why you can't stop the run? He's like, it's the tackling. It's like, okay, that's not a good thing to have as an issue. PJ Fleck said they've played 2 bad halves in 4 games, but it's like, well, that's kind of a lot of bad halves, actually, when a couple of other games were against nobodies. He thinks they're hesitant on defense, which is if you're hesitant, I can't, but there's a couple so that Illinois was like, hey, you want to go to Nebraska? Hey, congratulations on your win. Oh, what do we have this week? You're going to Penn State. What? Mm-hmm. And that Minnesota is like, hey, hey, you have Caleb Johnson. It's like, oh, okay, that didn't work. Who do we have this week? Kalel Mullings. Congratulations. So there's a defense that can't tackle and is hesitant, and they're getting Kalel Mullings. I'm worried. I think Gophers will be harmed in the filming of this movie. We better call PETA. Meanwhile, Minnesota can't run. Their offensive line is super veteran. They were excited about it. They're averaging like 3.8 yards per carry and running for 117 yards per game with a guy who was great last year. So I have no idea what's happening. And then it's like, well, you know, maybe Max Brosmer can throw to Daniel Jackson. You think he can throw against Michigan? Well, the thing is, they have the best cornerback in the country. Okay. So this is one of these things, again, that like everything that is happening with Minnesota is going to be, all their problems will be amplified by playing Michigan. Yeah. This is exactly who they do not want to be playing this week. Colston Loveland apparently is going to be a game time decision. Great Michigan tight end, did not play last week. Pete Thamel from ESPN reporting he'll be a game time decision. Hate it for Minnesota. It's 28-13 Michigan.
Yeah, this is a trophy game, right? They play for a jug. They play for the brown jug.
Love the jug.
Yeah.
No pig. It's no pig.
It's no pig. We'll take a jug. Yeah, just an awful spot for quite literally the last team Minnesota should want to be playing.
The only thing worse would be playing Iowa again.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what Michigan tries to layer on top of the Alex Orji we run the ball every play offense. Yeah. But yeah, I think it'll be that will be enough for them to win this game. I have Michigan 28-7, and I think Minnesota could be in shutout territory this week too.
Like this is not the week to find out. I barely talked about Michigan because I don't think we're going to find out anything about Michigan, because just like the things that they already do, great.
Yeah.
Just do this. What are you going to layer on top of what you have? More of the same. It's like a layer cake, but it's all the same layers. The bottom layer is Kalel Mullings, and then we have a little thin layer of Donovan Edwards. Then we have a layer of Alex Orji, and then who do you have next? More Kalel Mullings. And PJ Fleck is like, I hate this food. PJ Fleck likes crispy bacon. He does not like Wolverine cake. All the layers are the same, and they all
hurt.
Make him. He is Wolverine He's Wolverine intolerant. He needs a pill. Oklahoma State at Kansas State. Big game, but I can only talk about Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy so much on this show, and we did a lot with them last week when they played Utah.
We did do a lot last week. Both teams coming off of a loss. This game is at noon on ESPN, by the way. Oklahoma State lost to Utah last week. Kansas State obviously lost to BYU last week. Chris Kleiman is 1-4 against Mike Gundy since coming to Kansas State in 2019, which kind of surprised me a little bit. Obviously, Oklahoma State's a really good program, but I view Kansas State as a good program too, and Chris Kleiman is a good coach. So it's like it's not Whittingham versus Gundy, but it's like Kleiman's resume is pretty impressive, and he's 1-4 against Mike Gundy. I was pretty unimpressed with Oklahoma State watching that game against Utah. So I kind of feel like this is a bounce back spot for Kansas State at home, even though Kansas State has not played all that well. But I would just like to see Kansas State again lean into running the ball a little more. Avery Johnson had 25 rushing attempts the last 2 weeks. 18 of them were designed. So they're doing it more, but I think they can do it perhaps even more than that. So I think maybe they get into some more running the ball against Oklahoma State. And I have a winning 35-24.
I have 31-20 Kansas State. This is only a 5-point line. Kansas State favored at home. I love Kansas State this week.
Yeah.
It's not a betting show, but I think Oklahoma State's loss to Utah last week was completely indicative of who Oklahoma State is. And I think Kansas State's loss at BYU was almost in no way indicative of who Kansas State is. They got caught in a tsunami. Now, they did turn the ball over, and Avery Johnson has to stop throwing interceptions. That's the only thing. But, other than that, it's a goofy punt return. It's a DJ Giddens fumble. It's like some weird it was not their night, and we didn't like the spot. So you come home, you lick your wounds, you get yelled at all week by a good coach who also was putting up on the board that I'm 1-4 against Mr. Mullet. So Pat Narduzzi came on and said, personal. I hope Chris Kleiman made it personal this week. You guys should be embarrassed about how you played, and I am embarrassed to be 1-4 against Mike Gundy. Who's going to do something about it?
I'm fired up.
I forgot to do my fake speech, but that is my fake speech. Who's going to do something about it? This is not who we are. So I think this is I'm on alert for I love this play this week, but I'm on alert for Kansas State showing who Kansas State is. The only other game that I considered going to, and I just got lazy, Maryland at Indiana, noon on the Big Ten Network, I think is perhaps a game of two very good football teams that are going to play a very good football game. Do you think that might happen?
Yes. I don't know that I might stop short of very good. I think how about competent?
One pretty good team and one better than you thought team. How about that?
Yeah, I think so. Like a team that's gonna in Maryland that's gonna, I think, throw some stuff at Indiana that it hasn't seen yet. Right. And Curt Cignetti said that. Curt Cignetti said this week, we haven't played anybody yet. Everyone's like, hey, Curt, you're 4-0. You feel pretty good about that? He's like, we haven't, our schedule's been terrible. So I appreciated that about him. This is Maryland's not a juggernaut, but this is definitely a step up from what Indiana has seen so far.
Ty Felton, your guy, 54 targets, 41 catches, 604 yards. He's had exactly 15 targets in each of the last 3 games. And Mike Loxley, the Maryland coach, is like, well, I don't think Curt Cignetti's going to allow that. So that they are expecting Indiana to try to take away Ty Felton, who has been setting the world on fire. So then what? Caden Prather's been pretty good for Maryland. Curt Cignetti recruited Billy Edwards, the Maryland quarterback, when Curt Cignetti was at JMU. And I think he thought he was going to get him. And then Billy Edwards kind of blew up and got better offers. But I think Curt Cignetti loves Billy Edwards, the Maryland quarterback. But you know who he also loves? Curtis Rourke, the Indiana quarterback. He's in command. Mm-hmm. Cignetti said about Curtis Rourke. He's playing with a lot of confidence. He's seeing the field. He's making the throws. When the pattern breaks down, he's running for yards, touchdowns, first downs. The guys have a lot of confidence in him. You can really see it all coming together. And I thought as the game went on, he was really sharp. So as much as Curt Cignetti is saying, we haven't played anybody, I think he loves where they are. Indiana is 20 of 22 on scoring touchdowns in the red zone. And the 2 they didn't score was third stringers against Western Illinois when they scored 77 and kneeling against Western Illinois. So they're basically perfect on their touchdown percentage in the red zone. And Maryland's defense is good. I think, so this is a 7-point spread. Tishu really likes Maryland +7 here. And I guess he should, because we both have Indiana winning close. I would just tell people to watch this game. 27-24 Indiana.
I think it's going to be a really fun game. I have Indiana winning 35-31. I like Indiana's ability to be a little more balanced in this game. I think the one thing for Maryland that has been frustrating for me this year is Mike Loxley talking a lot about how they wanted to run the ball better this year, and they're 74th in the country in rushing offense. They just haven't done it. So if Indiana does find a way to slow down Billy Edwards and Ty Felton and Caden Prather, it's I don't know that Maryland can respond by running the ball. And I think if Maryland does take something away from Indiana, it has good quarterback play, it has good receivers, it has a good offensive line, and it has a really good stable of running backs. I think it just has more answers. So it'll win a game that I think will be pretty tightly contested.
Before we get to our last 2 picks, Mike, I don't know if we have the graphic. I forgot to do it earlier. Our picks for the year so far, we both went 15-6. Last week, which was not great. It was our worst week so far. We missed 4 games together.
That's nice.
We both picked Illinois we both picked Nebraska to beat Illinois. That was wrong. We picked USC to beat Michigan. That was wrong. We picked K-State to beat BYU. That was wrong. We picked Syracuse to beat Stanford. That was wrong. And then we also split on the 4 games we disagreed on. We split. So we both went 15-6. For the season, I am 72-11. And you are 69-14. We only have 3 games.
Not according to this graphic.
What did I say?
I think those were last week's numbers.
Oh, no. That's right. I'm 87-17.
Yeah.
And you're 84-20. Yeah, that's my bad. See, that's what that line means, Doug. 87-17, 84-20. So maybe let's do better. 15-6. These are not against the spread. 15-6 is not good. We were dumb last week, Landis.
Yeah. Well, what are you going to do? I'm going to be dumb most weeks. I'll apologize in advance for it.
So we do have 2 more picks that do count. They're just not our northern games. We have our G5 game of the week, which is Washington State at Boise State. This super matters for the playoff race.
It does super matter for the playoff race. It's at 10 o'clock on FS1. Boise State, number 25 in the country, the leader in the clubhouse for that G5 playoff spot. Washington State, 4-0. This would be a heck of a win, I think, for Boise State. I also think this is going to be the most entertaining game of the day. I think both these offenses are going to run crazy. I don't think either of these defenses are going to stop anybody. I think it's going to be awesome. So if you're willing to stay awake at 10 o'clock and watch this game, take a little bit of a break to watch KOT and late night, then go back to watching this game, or watch them both at the same time. You can double screen it if you'd like to. I think it's going to be really fun. I'm expecting fireworks in this game. Ashton Genty running wild. John Mateer, the quarterback of Washington State, running wild. I have Boise winning 49-42.
And I have Boise winning 41-34. And then we probably will stake our claim as the National College Football Show talking the least about Alabama and Georgia, but we are making a pick, and we're picking against Georgia. If you pick Georgia, I'm taking Bama 28-20. I just want to root against Georgia. Roll Tide.
Yeah, I would never pick Georgia on a show with you. I can promise you that.
Thank you.
I just think Alabama. I think Alabama's better. Alabama's at home. Alabama has the better quarterback. I like Kalen DeBoer in big games. I don't think he'll shy away from this. So I have Bama winning 38-35.
Banger. Wow. How about that? One of my crazy preseason predictions was Bama beats Georgia, then Bama does not make the playoff. So we need the first part of that to come true. And now we're down to the dragon statue. And we've had some developments. Mike, let's roll tape. I just want you to know you've done nothing wrong, and I will get you back. Please don't forget me.
Ty Felton sends his regards.
Man took my statue. Look at that.
Sure did.
Took the statue, won the dragon statue last week with your fantasy picks. You won by picking the exact same players that I wanted to pick, but you got your picks in first.
Yeah.
So you won with Kyle McCord and Ty Felton, but you didn't win by much. I had Curtis Work and Pat Bryant.
I was pretty sure I lost, actually, and I double checked my math. You do trust me to do the math.
I do. Right, I trust your math more than mine. Yes.
I double checked it. So I won narrowly. The thing you get helped by in fantasy is accumulating receptions, right? I think it's like a half a point per reception. And Ty Felton had 14 of them last week. So Ty Felton with his 14 receptions for 157 yards and 1 touchdown got me the W, got me the dragon statue, which I don't think is ever going to leave my house. Sorry to say.
I miss it.
He fits in nicely here. So I think I'm going to keep him.
Where are you going to put it? You're going to replace your bird's helmet with it?
I got a shelf behind me. You can't see it because I'm blocking it, but I have my fantasy hockey championship trophy is there. So I think I'm going to put this right next to it.
I miss it. I feel its absence. I seriously do. Like, I'm going to turn around.
It's like the ring calling for you. Like your
hat. I have my Georgia hat and my dragon statue, and now it's just a freaking bulldog hat. It's ridiculous. So I lost last week. So who are our picks this week? Who are you picking this week, Landis? We're taking a Northern quarterback and a Northern skill player for our fantasy picks each week.
Yeah. I am picking Oregon quarterback Dylan Gabriel in a game where I think Oregon's offense really puts it on UCLA. And I am picking Kalel Mullings against Minnesota as the Minnesota defenders are seeing ghosts of Caleb Johnson. And Kalel Mullings is just running it all over them in that game.
Okay. I really thought about Dylan Gabriel this week, and Kalel Mullings is a good pick. I'm not feeling great. Oh, wait. I took Dylan Gabriel also. I thought about it so hard, I took Dylan Gabriel. Mike, we both have Dylan Gabriel. How about that?
I know. I wasn't going to say anything because I wanted to let it happen this week where it's going to come down to running back versus running back.
Okay.
Who did you think you switched your pick to?
Yeah, I was going to say you texted me that like early yesterday.
I don't know. I was thinking about Dylan
Bill
Raiola too.
First again. Bill was first.
He was
again
first again.
So, we can change it if you want.
Well, Bill, what do you want to do? Do we both want to go with Dylan Gabriel, or do we want to switch our quarterbacks right now and both save Dylan Gabriel? Do we want to switch them in the moment?
Like we'll both have to switch and save Dylan Gabriel?
Yeah. We both have to switch.
Okay, let's switch.
Okay. So I have Mekhi Bernard from Utah, who had a huge game last week. We have to use a quarterback that we have not used before. I'll take Drew Aller. I don't think I've used Drew Aller. Is that okay with you if I take Drew Aller?
That's okay. You have not. I have it. Our picks tabulated for the year. You have not taken Drew Aller yet. I will take Will Howard.
Okay. I have used Will Howard. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's Drew Aller and Mekhi Bernard against Kalel Mullings and Will Howard. And we'll both save Dylan Gabriel for later.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
All right. I got to get my statue back, man. Thanks to you guys for being part of Kings of the North. Friday morning, me and Tyler Shoemaker, Bets of the North. We lost our $500 bet last week. We're still up more than $1,000 for the year. Tune in to find out what our big pick's going to be. Plus, we have an upset pick and some other best bets. I feel pretty good about some of my best bets this week. And then Saturday night, live on YouTube, 11 p.m., KOTN late night. And we will wind up talking at least a little bit about Alabama and Georgia on that game. But we're going to talk a lot about Penn State, Illinois. And there's some really good night games, Landis, but we'll talk about the whole day.
Yeah, it'll be a fun exercise too to start the show as those games are ending. So.
Yeah, they're moving all those games. Like Ohio State will be ending, right? Yeah, that some of these 7:30 instead of 7:00 starts. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But we hope you guys join us there. We always appreciate you for showing up here live on YouTube, for showing up if you're listening on a podcast or if you're listening back on YouTube. We're just so glad that you are part of Kings of the North. We want to give our thanks to the ultimate Northern man, Pat Narduzzi. You can call him Nardog. He didn't say we couldn't. He didn't say don't call me that, right? If he would have said don't call me Nardog, we wouldn't call him Nardog, but he didn't say that.
Mm-hmm. No,
he's open to it.
He embraced it.
Yeah, he embraced it. So had a good time with him. We always want to thank our producer, Mike Urostowski, who does all the graphics, keeps us looking good and sounding good. For now, thanks to you guys. He is Bill Landis. I am Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.